So we'll take a couple of minutes, people joining, and we'll start. Right? Now, can we make a start or wait for 5 minutes, or what do you prefer?
I think somebody who's looking at the participants can take a call, but we should start in maximum in another by 4:05, not more than that, maybe.
Yes, yes. Yeah, not more than 5 minutes. All right, then let me begin by welcoming all the participants to this webinar, where I am Dr. Arun Gupta on behalf of the Nutrition Advocacy in Public Interest, the National Think Tank on Nutrition Policy. We are organizing this webinar today to share the findings of a newly published peer-reviewed study done by the Institute of Population Sciences, the famous institute where we have the origin of NFHS. So we are going to have this program run till 5:30 or 5:45 today, and I'll just give you an update of what has been happening so far, and then I'll hand over to Dr. Vandana Prasad, who is going to chair the session today. So this program will run with Dr. Vandana Prasad giving the opening remarks, and then presentation by Professor Singh, And then we have lined up eminent experts in the field of this child and public health who are going to give comments. And then it will be followed by questions by participants as well as media. So just to give you a brief on the what has been happening so far, I'll take back a couple of minutes on that. 15 February of 2050, 15 February of 2022, the FSSAI took a decision in the stakeholders meeting that they are going to take a health star rating label on the front of the pack of the unhealthy food products. In addition to this, there were two, three things that we have been focused more on the type of the label, but there were two or three more disturbing things within that decision. One, that the nutrient content of sugar, for example, the threshold was kept around 20.7, which is almost double than what the WHO recommends. And second was that it was intended that it will take 4 to 5 years to bring it into a mandatory phase. So all that is based on the study done by Institute of Management in Ahmedabad, which was a study done by them and of a sample of 20,000, but the study has some flaws and the public health experts all over the country have done critique of that study and called it not reliable for making a policy. And there were some issues regarding the study did suggest a bias because the FSSAI had briefed them that include positive nutrients when you are dealing with this. So based on that, in the past 6 months, there's been a lot of highlights in the media. We thank media for picking this subject in a comprehensive manner, and more than 50 publications in the media, in the key media, as well as in the print and the electronic, have highlighted this issue. What we did was that we find that 6th of September, there is a news item in the Food and Nutrition called F&B News, which clearly reveals that FSSAI is still working on the same. It has had no impact of our work so far. So that's why we thought that this study is very timely, that we are going to share these findings with them. And that brings me to introduce Dr. Vandana Prasad, who will be running through the whole work today as the chairperson of this meeting. Vandana is a very dear friend. She's been working on the public health issues. I've been known her since more than 25 years. And she is a community pediatrician and has been all her life in working with children and mothers, malnutrition in the villages where people don't go normally. And she has been working earlier with the government also as a member of the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights. And she is the convener of the Public Health Resource Network, founder, secretary, and she is the advisor now. She belongs to both Jan Swasthya Abhiyan, the public health movement, people's health movement, as well as the right to food movement. So it's always a pleasure to have you, Vandana, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Arunji. It's really a huge privilege to be here amongst this panel of absolute luminaries, and we are going to be very lucky to be hearing the presentation from a very, very timely study, as Dr. Arun Gupta has mentioned, as well as experts who really need no introduction, and I will be inviting them to make comments on the study. Just to be clear that the backdrop of this work is this silent emergency, this unspoken of pandemic of non-communicable diseases that is hitting our country so strongly and so rapidly. If NFHS 5 has told us anything, it is the acceleration in the rates of rising obesities and NCTs, which is of course hitting the middle class at this point of time much more than the poor, but it's not as though it's not hitting the poor, and the same families that are malnourished are getting diabetes, hypertension, the middle class, practically a very large percentage of children are becoming obese and, are already showing biomarkers of diabetes and hypertension. And, so we can kind of foresee a very difficult time for public health in this country unless we take the issues that are factorial determinants in this very seriously. And that is really where this whole issue of front of package labeling has come up. And the people sitting here, many in the participants, are also experts, are also people who have been helping this discussion and debate move forward. Now, as we know, this is the era of evidence-based policy making, so-called, but that is also problematic because very often the evidence that we need from a minor side of a debate simply doesn't exist. Now, when we have been doing this advocacy for warning labels, I mean, in one sense, it seems so self-explanatory and so logical and so commonsensical that warning labels, if you have a problem with NCDs, you want warnings. That seemed to have been commonsensical, except that, as Arunji has mentioned, the policy is going in an entirely different direction for various pushes and pulls. And the entire evidence that really was there was this piece of evidence that was coming up from the IIM study. One bias Dr. Arun Gupta mentioned, but there was also a bias within the study itself because the findings placed warning labels and health star ratings side by side. In some indicators, warning labels were superior to health star ratings, but when the recommendation came and the conclusion came, it did not mention warning labels one bit, not at all. And when we ever spoke about this, the question to us was, where is the evidence? And now, fortunately for us, in this very rigorous study that I read for the second or third time and read just yesterday all over again, very rigorous study that has been conducted by such a professional organization as IIPS, is now providing what was required by the policymakers, a peer-reviewed piece of quantitative research that would support what the rest of us were trying to say. So without further ado, I will invite Dr. Singh to present the study. Just a few words about him, though he needs no introduction. He is a professor and head of the Department of Survey Research and Data Analytics at IIPS Mumbai. And he has been involved with large studies with assisting WHO, UNAIDS, and the government constantly on various surveys that he's been done. I'm not going to take the time to read out all of that work. And I think that the point is that he is a reputed researcher, a reputed quantitative researcher, and he is the one who's led this study. So now we shall hear from Dr. S.K. Singh in about 20 minutes, a presentation of the main key findings of the study. And then after that, I will invite the panelists one by one to make their comments also. And then we will lay it open for questions after the panelists have had one round of say, and perhaps we will give the panelists a chance to come back again once the questions are also in place. So over to you, Dr. S.K. Singh, and you have about 20 minutes. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Prasad. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. At the outset, I am thankful to the organizers, especially coordinator of nutrition advocacy in public interest, to give us this opportunity to share the key findings of our study, identifying effective front of package levels on unhealthy packaged and processed food in India. Evidence from randomized field trial. Randomized control trial has often been used for experimental research, but in quasi-experimental framework, we adopted randomized field trial. In the current phase of transforming India, with significant acceleration in health and wellness and improved prospects of achieving sustainable development goals in most of SDG health indicators, especially focusing on maternal and child health, we are facing some newer challenges. Chairperson has already highlighted, and she has given the term, following our European Commission has also considered that the obesity as epidemic in the country. There is no dearth of information giving linkages between these two processes. We all are having enough evidence showing that increasing obesity is responsible for various types of NCDs in our country. Recently concluded NFHS 5 is also indicating towards that. But most important aspect is not only NCDs. After 75 years of independence, when country is celebrating Amrit Mahotsav, India has reached to below replacement level fertility. Along with demographic transition, we are also facing age structural transition. And with population aging, burden of NCDs is also increasing. Currently, nearly 1 in 4 adults and 1 in 20 children are classified as overweight and obese. If we are looking in terms of NCDs, prevalence of overweight and obesity increased by 4 points in last 4 years. NFHS 4 was conducted in 2016 and midpoint of NFHS 5 is 2020. That is why among men aged 15 to 54, it has increased from 90 to 23%. And women aged 15 to 49, it has increased from 20.7 to 24%. If you look at Indian situation, nearly half of the country, not only South, nearly over half of the districts in the country, starting from Arunachal Pradesh here, Ladakh, Jammu Kashmir, Gujarat, Maharashtra, and of course, southern states have become epicenter of obesity in the country. It has virtually become a universal phenomenon. That is why I completely agree with our chairperson of today's meeting, Dr. Vandana Prasad, who is talking India has become now center of obesity and it should be treated. It is the right time where all leading experts, including Professor Reddy sitting here, should advocate for considering it as an epidemic in the country. On the other hand, if we are looking at NCD scenario, our NFHS 5 figures are giving almost alarming situation. If we are going for 15 plus population, 21% of women and 20% of men in the country are suffering with diabetes and hypertension. About 1/3 of adults in the country were affected with diversity, either diabetes or obesity or both. That is why it is becoming a further challenge. 40% of obese men and 28% of obese women is 15 to 49 suffer from hypertension that is leading towards cardiovascular. That is why obesity is the real problem and ease of access to energy dense, inexpensive processed foods is one of the key drivers. If you are looking at blood sugar, like obesity, almost a similar pattern we are getting with relatively larger dominance, larger concentration in southern and western part for very high diabetic prevalence, and 11 and plus if you are looking more than half of the districts, which is not only restricted to southern part. Similarly, if you are looking blood pressure, elevated blood pressure, there also we are getting a similar situation. That is why there is a definite pattern emerging. If you are looking at key drivers of this phenomena of obesity and NCDs in the country, from NFHS unit level data, we have highlighted, we have analyzed with different degree of covariates, sedentary lifestyle, unhealthy dietary patterns, and increasing tobacco and alcohol consumption has emerged as the key drivers. If you are looking at dietary trend, because sedentary lifestyle cannot be changed overnight, that will require rapid rise in prevalence of obesity is linked with increased level of ultra processed foods. If you look at here, 2010 to 2019, in 10 years, there is 5 times increase in retail value of ultra processed products in our country. That indicates the consumption of these nutrients, which is highly associated with chronic nutrition related disease. That is why this is the high time when we should look for front of package labeling, which can provide useful information to consumers at the point of decision making that allows them to identify food and beverages that may be unhealthy. We have twofold objective here. First is to critically assess the effectiveness of various FOPLs available globally, which may suit to India's population, where more than 20% population is still illiterate. But only literacy may not be adequate enough for taking such decisions. And then FOPL study findings are expected to provide an effective evidence-based for policy instrument and advocacy tools. If you are looking globally, there are two types: summary indicator system and nutrient specific system. Even in nutrient specific system, non-interpretative levels and interpretative levels. And if you may look at the process, how FOPL will change nutritional behavior of the people, it will go through 5 different stages. Those 5 different stages varies from guidance simplicity to information complexity. And looking at our socio-cultural diversity, educational attainment, urban-rural divide, digital divide in the country, we will have to go for guidance simplicity rather than information complexity. The reason is that after looking at any nutrients package, front of package, first one is the label attention. And looking label attention lead towards comprehension, cognitive elaboration, and message acceptance. From here, a subject will go for negative effect or risk perception. How risky is that? That will constitute the behavioral intention, ultimately lead towards behavioral response. That is why, while conceptualizing this study of testing which FOPL will be most suited for Indian population, we have gone for guidance simplicity rather than information complexity. It is against this backdrop we are dealing with 2 primary objectives: to examine the extent to which different FOPL influence Indian adults' ability to identify unhealthy products, and second, their intention to purchase unhealthy products. This intention to purchase unhealthy product is the second stage when behavioral attention is translated into behavior change. Primary outcomes were proportion of participants who were able to correctly identify that product contained excess amount of nutrients of concerns and intention for product purchase. Study also examined perceived message effectiveness to highlight the process. What is the process through which these changes may be possible? Perceived message effectiveness of different levels as well as product perceptions and level reactions. This we have treated as a secondary outcome. Our primary outcomes are these 2. Second question, that what should be the approximate sample size? In NFHS, we are going for 700,000 households. But there our purpose is to estimate something not only at national and state level, but even at district level. But for this kind of study, we have treated 6 different regions, and to capture implicit heterogeneity, we have taken 6 different states, but ultimately we have adopted the scientific method for determining sample size of any study with probability sample, irrespective of area of investigation. Out of these 2, expected baseline value or magnitude of change desired to be able to detect, our confidence level, generally we are going for 95% confidence for this kind of social and health related issues, statistical power. And since we are not adopting strict probability sampling, we are going at multi-stage sampling. And that is why design effect should be considered. What we have done in this study? There was evidence from recently concluded Columbia study. From FOPL versus no level, it increased from 20 to 29%, from control to experimental group. And that is why we took that method and adopted magnitude desired to be able to detect that, to capture that desire with 95% confidence level, 5% type 1 error, 80% power, 20% type 2 error, and design effect of 2 with a non-response of 10%. We are getting around 500 sample size. But since we are going to conduct a pan-India study by taking 6 different states, we have replicated this sample size into all 5 arms, because we are our randomized field trial we are doing. one control group and 4 experiment group. That is why 2,500 is becoming ideal sample size. But since we are planning to divide it into 6 geographical regions, we went for slightly higher, and by taking 420, for a location of 420 also, we adopted a very scientific design. That design was discussed with FSSAI CEO, Mr. Singla was there that time. We had a discussion. His suggestions were also incorporated. Earlier, this study was only in urban and semi-urban areas, but he told that no, please include rural component also. And that is why we changed our design slightly. Inclusion criteria, we took 8 to 60 years age. Exclusion criteria, those working for market research, advertising, tobacco, food and beverage companies, we excluded them. And even within randomized field experiment, we adopted a very sound technique of post-stratification for fixing quota, so that in each group there should be adequate representation. This was the overall, our sample size. This was quota. And then I'm going back. Yeah. Then in-person field experiments we conducted in 6 states, that's Assam, Delhi, Gujarat, Odisha, Karnataka, and Uttar Pradesh. And ultimate sample size, which has been completed, is 2869. Basically, I will come to the actual process, what we have. Participants were randomized to one of the 5 study arms: control level, health star rating, warning level, traffic light levels, or ZDA. Outcome was ability to identify an intention to purchase, which I mentioned in the first. These were the sample of the product with these 5 levels. Here there was no level, only barcode was there. And on the remaining 4, and we used 5 such type of products. This is our composition of population, which is looking quite balanced as per the demographic composition of the country. And our field experiment has resulted that all the 4 FOPL which we tried has given a very positive result. In control, only 39% people correctly identify products with high nutrients of concern. But wherever there was warning levels, about 61%, ZDA 55%, and health star rating 45%, and multiple traffic light around 55%. I mean to say that in comparison to this control group, all 4 FOPLs has given significant improvement in people's ability to identify nutrients of concern. But when we are coming to the purchase instance, that difference is narrowed down. Only warning level has been slightly declined from 2.6 to 2.5, which becomes significant, but remaining. But if you look at across different, there is no drastic, a very not encouraging improvement across different. The reason is that our population, given their literacy and attention span and leading to behavioral traits, that's slightly process oriented. That is why it's not very encouraging. But if we are looking at message effectiveness, perceived message effectiveness, that also we canvass from 1 to 4 on Likert scale. There also, in comparison to control group 1.7, there is a perceived message effectiveness much higher in case of warning level in comparison to other 3 types of. If we look at different dimensions, that is a very transparent result. I'm not saying that any particular has performed well. If you look at this, do you like to have this level on the product? People are saying maximum in case of multiple traffic lights. But warning level has the maximum in gain in terms of most of those indicators. Here, of course, has the level taught you anything? Both are same. Similarly, do you think this product is visually attractive? Then ZDA is looking attractive. But if we compare, health star rating is not coming lead at the leading role in any of the 7 dimensions of perceived message effectiveness. That is why here we are getting, compared to control group, the warning level showed the largest impact in ability to identify products high in nutrients of concern. Warning levels were the only FOPL to reduce intention to purchase these products, showed the largest impact on other secondary outcomes, though the margin narrow, differences are very narrower. IIM study also, I have looked at that. I have looked at their result. On 13th, I have heard also presentation in PFI Ahmedabad organized one webinar. Dr. Dilip Maulankar was the key person behind that. That study also primary outcome was intention to not purchase products high in nutrients of concern. And if you look at their result also, warning level performed best on the outcomes. But I completely agree with chairperson's remark in the beginning of the session. She categorically told that if we look their results, in their results also, warning level is performing much better than others. But still, I don't know what is going on. Other outcomes are not useful for these debates because consumer preference not necessarily always predict their behavior. Outcomes that rely on consumers ranking products helpfulness do not always reflect how consumers make a decision because some implicit processes are involved, and for that we will have to look at those psychological steps: pre-contemplation, contemplation, action, preparation, action, and then confirmation. And at everywhere, Professor Reddy has already done a lot on in this area in case of tobacco control program before COTPA Act came in power in our country, and in Sir's leadership, country adopted that Empower strategy with WHO initiative. Like that, we will have to do something on that. Results of both the studies indicate that warning levels discourage people most from buying products with high nutrients of concern across geographies in India. Health star rating definitely nudges consumers towards healthier purchases, while other FOPLs like warnings discourage unhealthy purchases. We will have to make a distinction our priority. Health star rating has a chance to misrepresent the healthfulness of food products as focus on rankings and hence unlikely to achieve health goals. There is no evidence from any country that health star rating significantly impact nutritional quality of what consumer purchases. Suitably developed program and intervention around warning levels has a potential to address current epidemic of obesities and NCDs among adults and children in this country. These are my observations, viewpoints, and key messages which has emerged from our study. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Chairperson. I will be happy to answer any question.
Yes, Dr. Singh, that was just so very illuminating, and the study itself is a joy to read. It is published and available for public view, so I encourage everybody to go back and look at the details. I think just 1 or 2 points that were made very strongly. One is that amongst all the types of FOPL, clearly people could understand warning labels for doing what they claim to do, that is to warn against specific nutrients being too much in that product. And that is clearly the requirement, the starting point for people to take action, though in other parameters, much more work is required, which I think Dr. S.K. Singh has referred to. Why people behave in the way they do is a different ballgame, and there are other studies that also explain some of that, and I'm sure the panelists will be reflecting on that. And in the paper, he also mentions the outcomes that were seen in Chile, where warning labels have been applied and a 24 reduction in product consumption has been found. So, it has changed intent as well as practice. So that is heartening to us. So just a point there. Let me immediately introduce the next a panelist and invite them to make their preliminary comments. And then I am hoping to have 2-3 rounds each with the panelists also, because we are doing well for time. So let me invite first and foremost, Dr. Lalan K. Bharti. He is, today he is representing the IAP, the Indian Association of Pediatrics, which is great. He is a neonatologist. He is the vice president of the Neonatology Forum India as well, and he's the executive editor of the Journal of Neonatology. It's a great pleasure to have you here representing the group of pediatricians and who play such an important role in not only in practice, but also policy making, and are primarily concerned with the well-being of children in this country. So great pleasure to have you, and please make your comments on the study and whatever else that you feel that you would like to. You have about 5 minutes just now. Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the nice introduction, generous introduction. Good evening and greeting from Indian Academy of Pediatrics. At the outset, I would like to thank the organizer, especially Dr. Arun Gupta sir, for having me here. It is indeed a pleasure for me to present and participate on this platform and representing IAP. IAP is the largest representative association of more than 38,000 pediatricians in India, established in 1963, and IAP is committed to the improvement of health and well-being of children in India. As mentioned by Vandana ma'am, and in the study also, the Indian children and adolescents are facing epidemics, rather pandemics of non-communicable diseases like obesity, diabetes, and cardiac diseases. As mentioned earlier also, that the recent survey in India showed that the children between 5 to 19 years of age has biomarker of non-communicable diseases. As far as IAP is concerned, IAP has already published and formulated a guideline on the fast food and junk food and energy drink, suggesting a new acronyms, junks, and junks, J for the junk food, U for ultra processed food, N for nutritionally inappropriate food, C for colored, carbonated, caffeinated food and beverages, and S for the sugar sweetened beverages. It is recommended the limiting the consumption of junk food through the policy options, including the front of pack labeling, restriction of marketing, higher taxation on such type of food, and improve school food environment. These days, children are easily influenced by the luring advertisement of unhealthy food products. The policy to provide a warning on front of pack product is need of hour and should be mandatory in our country. As per WHO prescribed threshold, FOPL on the product, high in sugar, salt, and saturated fat should be mentioned boldly on the pack so that everyone can make it out. The present study provides clear evidence to support the policy of warning level, and Food Safety and Standard Authority of India, Ministry of Health should make use of it. Indian Academy of Pediatrics shall be standing shoulder to shoulder with all the organizations to take this novel mission to the logical end for restricting the use of unhealthy food, which will further decrease the incidence of non-communicable disease and eventually help the building of healthy children and prosperous nation. So thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Lalanji. Before I'm going to move to the next panelist, I just wanted to find out from you, has there been any discussion in IAP on the different types of FOPL, and maybe is there a stand that you think that IIP is willing to take, and do you think that some action might be led by IIP? Because I think that it's very important. I mean, it's a very important association to actually speak to government. So maybe you could just tell us if there have been any discussions already, or maybe something you intend to take forward.
IAP has always been discussing regarding this. And as I have already said, that IAP has formulated a guideline on junks. And whenever possible, IAP will definitely join hand to take this mission forward.
Right. Thank you so much. And that acronym JUNKS is very useful for us also to hear, and we note that, and we shall be talking more about it. So moving on, and then, as I said, I will be coming back to some of the panelists again when more questions come up. The next person that I would like to invite is Dr. Pankaj Bhardwaj. He is the academic head of the School of Public Health and the Vice Dean for research at AIIMS Jodhpur. So he's also the editor-in-chief for the Indian Journal of Community Medicine. And he is also representing the Indian Association of Preventive and Social Medicine today at our meeting. So it's wonderful to have you. And again, a very important forum, a powerful forum, a forum that's very, for which it is very relevant, I think, this topic of conversation. So over to you, Pankajji. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dr. Prasad, for this opportunity. And at the outset, again, I would like to bring greetings from Indian Academy of Preventive and Social Medicine. And it's an age-old organization established in 1974, and we are working as a group of public health people who are actually towards the preventive and social medicine. So let's come to the study. I would like to extend again heartfelt thanks and congratulations to Dr. Singh and his team for bringing out this very important topic, and the and I would say at the outset, because I also look at the research part and being one of the editor in the journal, when we look at the methodology used in this study is very robust, and I think it's in alignment with the objectives. The objectives are very clear, and again, compliments to Dr. Singh and his team, because the objectives stated, the objectives were very clear, and the objective was that the primary objective was whether the consumers were able to identify unhealthy food or not. And I think that's the basic question. And I will come to that. Whenever any government or policy making person or body is there, they need to have some focused question in their mind. And I think if this is the focused question, which I believe is an important question towards making FOPL, that which type of FOPL system or which type of FOPL system is going to be in place in a country, we need to identify that what is a basic question. Is it to identify unhealthy food, or is it to give them a kind of an option for a healthy food? So if the question is this, which Dr. Singh has already worked, and I think this should be the question before each and every policy maker, that the consumers should be able to identify unhealthy food. And as he very rightly mentioned, when he show in the context or in that diagram, that it should be a kind of an ease with which in a country like ours in India, where the kind of literacy varies, then we don't need any ambiguous things in this country, because the kind of literacy varies. And I was going through the study, it was very clearly mentioning that it is less than 12 years of education. So this part was also important. The representativeness which the study show is also very important. They said it's been in 6 states. It was having a sizable proportion of people from the peri-urban areas, rural areas, urban areas. Then I think it's an important part, and this study covers the things very well. As chairperson also mentioned in the beginning, that there is some kind of a thing which was not very clear from the study, was about that intention of buying or from the consumer side, that whether they are going to have some healthy options or not. Definitely some sensitivity analysis is given from the side of study also. We were going through that. But again, I will go to the earlier thing which I mentioned, that it is more about what is the question in place. Is it to identify unhealthy? And then I think warning labels very exclusively and very robustly came out to be the kind of system which should be focused on or addressed by the policymakers. There are other evidences also which are present from across country. Chile is an example where it has been working well. Before I end, as Chairperson said, that we would be having another round of discussion on some of the areas or questions which the listeners may also put. We also speak in terms of what we call as policy triangle. And when we say about policy triangle, we say that in policy triangle, three things are important: context, content, and process. And there are some actors. So when we teach all these subjects to our students, we say what is the content, what is the context, and what is the process which we are adopting. Now, in terms of health policy system research also, the kind of evidence should not be a kind of an evidence which puts more confusion than clarity. I think few of the earlier studies have put some of the confusions than clarity. So that may mislead the policymakers or people who are working in this area. The actors are very important. I think when we get this thing that people identify unhealthy food, one of the actors are the people who are manufacturers. So they will get a chance to shift towards healthier production of healthier foods. So this is also some of the things which this study is also referring to, not directly but indirectly. So once again, thank you from our side and for giving us the opportunity to go through the study and to put our points. Again, in the end, I would like to summarize with this point that we study very well, very robustly with a very good statistical analysis and with a good representativeness of population could bring out the conclusion which is very much in alignment with the set objectives of the study. Once again, thank you so much, Dr. Singh and thanks to the chair for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Pankaj, for such clarity in your observations. And I'm sure that many of us, most of us, agree with this wholeheartedly. You're obviously a teacher. It comes through in your communication. And again, the same question to you that, you're representing an association that is very, very important. It's spread all over the country. We are talking about something nuanced. I think FOPLs, everybody is now agreeing that FOPLs should happen and they're likely to come up. Government is likely to bring them in. But it is a question of which one, and the study is helping to illuminate that. So has this kind of nuance been discussed within the IAPSM? And does IAPSM have a stand on which type of FOPL? And would it be willing to proceed and make certain recommendations to government on that front?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Prasad, for bringing this point. The association is been working in this area quite long. So we have one or two studies already published where the academy through the different medical schools, we have taken them on board, and AIIMS Rishikesh is taking the lead in that. AIIMS Jodhpur is also a part of that consortium which is being made and working in area of FOPL with our civil society organization people. So we are working with them. And as you rightly questioned that, do we have some specific FOPL system which we are actually preferring to? The studies are going on, the discussions are going on, but definitely the more we are reading, the more we are going through the desk reviews or the systematic reviews published so far, definitely warning labels are coming up very boldly. But again, as we are all scientists and scientific people, we know it's a behavioral sciences also. So we need to be quite cautious not to adopt anything which either Chile or Australia or New Zealand or any other country has taken. We need to work more and more, and we need to generate more evidences like Professor Singh has generated from IIPS, and maybe the other associations all join hands together to have more evidences to reach to a single system of warning, a single system of FOPL, maybe warning currently as it looks. So, thank you so much.
Yes, makes a lot of sense, except that the pace is set by government, and I just hope that you will also keep engaged with the government on while it's making policies, and they should not rush ahead and do what we consider not going to be useful. Coming to the next panelist to make their preliminary comments, and this is a person, Professor Keshinath Reddy, absolutely needs no introduction to anybody who's been part of public health in any way. He's a very, very senior resource person, expert in public health. He's currently the president of Public Health Foundation of India. He's been a long time colleague and comrade in arms, also speaking up for the vulnerable and the poor in the country in terms of public health. I mean, the idiom that he uses is public health, but a sensitive individual who has been representing public health issues from that point of view. He has held so many different posts and has had so many awards and honors. I'm not going to really read you through them because I think not required, because when we hear from him, we will once again be party to and have the privilege of hearing from a source of great expertise. So over to you, sir, Dr. Reddy.
Thank you, Dr. Vandana ji. The need for having effective health warnings is absolutely clear. The challenge of obesity and non-communicable diseases has amply been highlighted by Dr. Singh in his initial presentation. However, what we take as the measures of obesity conventionally underestimate the problems associated with unhealthy foods, because the anthropometric measures of obesity, which are conventionally adopted globally as cutoff, do not usually apply to Indians and other Asians, even according to WHO, because the metabolic risks actually start rising even within the so-called normal body mass index range because of increased body adiposity, as well as the greater tendency to accumulate fat across the viscera in the abdomen. Therefore, there is a much greater metabolic risk and risk of disease associated across a continuum of rising body adiposity, reflected partly by body mass index and the obesity indicators, but not entirely so. This becomes important because, as Dr. Singh said, even the conventional markers of obesity are already showing alarming trends of rise, both among adults and in children. And if we actually take what is hidden below the surface, then the risk is far more extensive than we recognize by the obesity measures. And this is a risk that we must actually appreciate as being related greatly to faulty nutrition. And we know that the high consumption of ultra-processed foods rising by the day poses a great danger in this area. Most of these marketed foods, which are ultra-processed, rich in unhealthy levels of nutrients, which are salt, sugar, and unhealthy fats, are essentially advertised addictions and marketed maladies, very aggressively pursued by the industry. And therefore, we do need to counter that with effective consumer education or enabling people to make the right choices with the right kind of information. Indeed, the FSSAI itself, in its own Eat Right campaign, emphasizes certain specific unhealthy levels of nutrients like salt, sugar, and saturated fat. Now, if we start telling that certain manufactured food items are healthy and they merit the health star rating, on what basis are we doing that? These are not natural food products like fruit and vegetables where we can say a composite of nutrients adds to a fairly healthy outcome. When you put a few fragments of nuts into a sugar-rich chocolate bar, who has actually tested the health outcomes of the consumption? It is a presumption that this is a balance that actually brings about health, which is incorrect scientifically to assume, and certainly a misleading message for the public. What we need to do very clearly is to communicate the specific nutrients and at what levels of acceptable or unacceptable levels they are present in that particular food item, and enable the consumer to make the choice for herself, himself, or for the family, and for the family, because we recognize a lot of children are involved as well. And in fact, the IIM study that has been cited has not really included even the teenage population, which is also an important element and who are often the targeted segment of the population. So in every sense, we are actually sending a misleading message by saying that these are healthy food products which can be consumed by giving them health star ratings. On the other hand, warning labels will give very clear-cut information on basis of which any person who can understand them has been, or at least has been informed about what their intent and purpose is, can make that choice. Also, we recognize that if we are really repetitively conveying the message that salt, sugar, and unhealthy fats beyond certain levels are really harmful to health, and they're very harmful to health, not only in terms of obesity, non-communicable diseases like cardiovascular disease and diabetes, but they also undermine native immunity, natural immunity. So they're also likely to produce much greater susceptibility to infectious diseases. There's so many other harmful consequences that we must point out. And given that this situation exists, we ought to communicate that message very clearly without confusing the public with what appears to be an endorsement of a questionable product, which then is going to be very aggressively marketed by the industry, claiming that they have the endorsement of the government.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reddy. Two of the main points that I would like to reinforce. One is that obesity trends and NCD trends already being high, but there is an understatement and an estimate of measures of obesity. Very important point. And in this context, I would just like to also mention that we have amongst us also Dr. H.P.S. Sachdeva, who has been working on biomarkers of obesity in childhood, and also showing that even children who are not just normally nourished, but also malnourished may continue to show biomarkers of NCDs in future life. So again, a very important piece of information there, and perhaps he will intervene at some point. And the second thing that Dr. Srinath Reddy did so well was to compare health star ratings and warning labels. Health star ratings continue to come up because the main study previous to this study highlighted health star ratings, and also as Dr. Arun Gupta pointed out, that the current policy seems to be veering towards health star ratings. So it is completely in place to be comparing these two constantly for us. So thank you very much for those comments, and I will be coming back to all of you. I wonder if our next panelist is present, is Dr. Ashwini Mahajan. Is he there? I didn't see him.
I didn't see him either.
Yes, so
Dr. Jose also probably
okay.
unable
So
to. And if they join, we'll take
if
them.
they join, we'll take them in. So Dr. Ashwini Mahajan is the national co-convener of the Swadeshi Jagran Manch, who from various standpoints, including traditional diets and so on, they have also been intervening with the government and on policy against junk food, and also in favor of FOPL, especially warning labels. And he was to have made some comments. We were also fortunate to have had been in contact with many MPs. Dr. Arun Gupta can, towards the end of this session, can talk to us about some of that also. But one of the members of parliament had agreed to be part of this meeting, Dr. Loro Fose, but he also warned us that he was traveling, and so perhaps he's had some difficulty. But they are on board and interested in this debate and this conversation, which will be very useful to us. So just, I'm not seeing any questions on the chat box. Please, Yashika, if there are questions from anybody, please feed them in. And meanwhile, I will ask a question to set another round because we do have a little bit of time. So encouraging all, especially people, friends here from press and media, if you have any questions to ask, please do put them up. And please identify yourselves as being from the press and media, and the panelists would be happy to answer them also. Somebody is being invited. Is it Debarshi? Debarshi Dasgupta, do you have a question? You can identify yourself. Meanwhile, just for the panelists to mull over, see, two questions come up. Why do we think that the government may be veering towards health star ratings? What is our understanding of that? We are all long-term practitioners and advocates, and we've been dealing with government in various platforms. So why do we think that that is happening? And secondly, another interesting question, because I don't think anybody claims that FOPL is the be-all and end-all of work on obesity and NCDs. We have talked about a 20% illiteracy, but the nutrition literacy is far lower than that. So there's a lot of work that we need to do as a country on nutrition. Really, it's a struggle. Very little conversation has happened upon, about decent food what that constitutes and so on. What do you think influences consumer behavior? There are many, many factors, and we would obviously have to deal with all of those. But I would invite the panelists to reflect on, and also some studies and evidence behind what makes people purchase. Like there are the economics at play, there are conveniences at play, and there are influences at play. And these are also all important. So I will be inviting the panelists to kind of mull over those things. Yes, Arunji, please, yeah. Come
There
in.
are 2 questions in the Q&A. I can just read them.
Yes.
How about putting a warning sign like on the packet of the cigarette? It contains harmful preservatives and various types of sugars, harmful to health. Consumers should know what is going inside. It's a question from Snehal Sangol. And the second is from Marilyn Paul.
Yes.
It
Can
says-
2 labels be combined? Yes.
yeah.
Can 2 labels be combined in a packaging? So they're simple questions, and I would invite any of the panelists to just take them on. So the first question, I mean, you've just heard them. Yeah, warning sign. Yes, please.
I can answer.
Please.
I think the one point that putting it as a warning like cigarettes, it's a good thing to think about that way. That using the government has used that as a method to alarm or warn people because of the harmful nature of the smoking. Now it's beyond a limit. Evidence is there that these products are harmful, but two natures, but ultra processed as well as containing high elements of nutrients of concern, whether it is salt, sugar, or fat. So whichever government decides, first the decision has to be taken whether it is a warning label or a health star. Now the second
So
question
the
is about
warning, I mean, the pictorial images on the cigarette packets are clearly warnings.
warning.
I think that is the point that should be very clearly understood. They're warnings. So yeah, that's
The
it.
second question about two labels, I am not very clear about whether you can put warning for all the three things or four things. There is a possibility that there can be four warnings that this product is high in sugar, high in salt, all have that their label on the front of the package, as all the Latin American countries have done it. So that is a possibility that you don't have to label the whole product. The product is high in sugar should be labeled as high in sugar. And if the question is like to put both the labels mean both, I don't understand which are the both, but there was some discussion going on earlier, can Health Star be combined with a warning label, which I don't think is a good idea, but it can be given an option for opinion.
Well, Dr. Singh in his presentation made it very clear that we need to go for guidance simplicity rather than information complexity. So we don't want to confuse anybody with multiplicity of what is important is to know this is harmful in this way. So yeah, okay. And I'm going to open it up to the panelists. So maybe going in the reverse direction, start with Professor Srinath Reddy.
On this particular issue?
No, on any of the issues that you could think about or talk about behavior in terms of consumption, what drives behavior, what drives consumption or purchase of food. You could talk about why why do you think government is veering towards health star ratings?
Well, when industry argues, whether in the case of tobacco or in the case of food products, that it's entirely the consumer choice and that we should not interfere with free market dynamics and particularly impinge on freedom of choice. There is a specious argument hidden inside, because choice can be either conscious, conditioned, or constrained. Conscious based on the right kind of health information or wrong kind of health information, health and nutrition. Therefore, you require a good deal of health and nutrition literacy to be communicated to the people and that to be enhanced to make that. The second is it can be conditioned by aggressive marketing and peer pressure, which is also stimulated often by the industry. Occasionally, cultural factors also come in. And all kinds of spurious appeals will also come in, like we have seen in the case of marketing of cigarettes to women. So therefore, that kind of a conditioning also needs to be combated by preventing misleading, misguiding advertisements and unethical marketing and promotion practices. The third, of course, is constrained by economic factors, where you may fully realize that a certain product is healthier than the one you're purchasing, but you cannot afford because your pocket doesn't permit. That often comes in with edible oils, that comes in with fruit and vegetables and so on. So we need to tackle all of these. But the area we are dealing with today is communicating the right kind of health and nutrition literacy in the most effective and honest manner possible. If we start giving them false imagery of, okay, this is good for your health, without having proved that it is good for your health, then that's a problem. Whereas we know with salt, sugar, and unhealthy fat, it has been proved that it is unhealthy for your health if it is not good for your health beyond a certain level. And therefore, I think we should communicate the right kind of information in the most effective manner possible. And this study is a fairly accompanying case study for that.
Thank you so much. Pankaj, would you like to add words to that?
I think I fully echo with Professor Reddy the points and the ideas which he mentioned. What I would like to say, because you also mentioned a kind of a comparison between what the struggle or battle was against the tobacco or smoking, and now with the food industry. There are some similarities, but there are huge differences also, because it leads to the food industry and something needs to be done in a different way and a very careful way. As Sir said, that it is very important that this is the choice of the consumer, which must not be attacked on. So it's the choice of me as a consumer what I want to have. That should always be addressed well. But I think FOPL alone, I always feel, is not the solution. It's not the magic thing which is going to change everything in due course. So FOPL, though, definitely is going to help in a long run. But the behavioral sciences, as he very rightly mentioned, not providing or not promoting or propagating misleading information to the consumers, and also improving the nutrition literacy amongst the people of this country, that is very important. So I think some kind of legislative measures which are in place now for the tobacco industry or TI, the similar kind of legislative measures for the food industries, it's very difficult and very I have a teen daughter, so when she saws advertisement where there is this cola food, and now that actor or actress is jumping like as if he is from a different planet. So these kind of misleading information to these adolescent children is actually a crime. It should be. Some legislative measures and a very strict legislative measures should be imposed. Last but not the least, I would say, because as I say, economic sanctions are also very important. So in tobacco industry, taxations, they call it as sin tax. So that was an important measure which the industry has taken, that it's a sin tax which government is now is taking in most of the part of the world, including India. But how that sin tax is going to be there in food industry is again a topic of discussion, which should be put to the policymakers and public health people to ponder upon. So thank you so much.
Thank you. You've brought to the fore two regulatory issues. One is regulation of advertising, very important, marketing and advertising. And the second is also taxation. And, so soda taxes in Mexico were applied after, but after everything really went wrong. So that is really also something to consider for us strongly. And thank you for raising those two new issues. So moving ahead to, maybe I can invite now Dr. Lalan Bharti for remarks from you.
Dr. Ashwini Mahajan has joined.
Okay, so Dr. Lalan, can I come back to you after giving the floor to Dr. Mahajan?
Yeah, ma'am, please.
All right. So Dr. Mahajan, welcome. We've been having a very rich conversation on this new study that has come up and that is proven so important and valuable, and which is highlighting warning labels as a clear way of communicating nutrition information that is relevant to the subject, which is to stop people eating things that are going to be harmful to their health. Ashwini ji, you've been part of this discussion and this debate and this conversation for a long time, so you're welcome. Please make your comments. Not able to hear you, Ashwini ji. Yeah, unmute.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you, Vandana ji. In fact, I would like to hear more from our experts, and then I'll join later. So you please continue with this.
Okay, then. So we were just discussing two things: what more needs to be done, plus why we think government is kind of tilting towards health star ratings. Some of these questions that had come up during the presentation, also what changes. Finally, what changes behavior and consumption, and so very valuable points were raised about costs. For example, I mean, good food is terribly expensive. Fruit and vegetables are beyond the reach of many of our a large percentage of the population, and so on and so forth, and many other such issues, cultural advertising and inducements, and so on. This was the conversation that was happening. So, Dr. Lalan, we were with you. So, any comments from you on all these issues?
Thank you, ma'am. As I think we should not confuse the consumer. And as some question came that we should mix two level and this starting. So I feel that consumer not be confused, and only one we should stick to one, and that should be so that the consumer can get the information and avoid this foods.
Right. Thanks very much for that clarification. Dr. Singh, your views on what's being discussed? Dr. Singh? And I also had a specific question, Dr. Singh. One of your slides, I think in the conclusion slides, the first slide said something about warning labels, alerting people to less purchase. Maybe I got it wrong, but I thought that that's perhaps not accurate. No, I don't think that any study so far has.
Now, warning level
Hmm.
having the highest proportion of people who were aware of those nutrients of concerns.
Yeah, that point was clear. But I
In
thought
the
that,
next slide, when there was a purchasing intention,
yeah.
where there was a purchasing intention, the difference was narrow.
Hmm.
Warning
Right.
levels which discourage respondents from purchasing products in the coming week. There, the difference between no level and each of the 4 warning levels, that difference was narrower.
Right.
It was not very profound difference,
Okay.
but still, there also warning level was significant.
I see. So thanks for that clarification, and please add your views and comments on.
Thanks a lot.
Anything you'd like to add to the conversation that we were having on what we need to do further? People have been talking about other interventions, legal interventions, regulatory interventions, the kind of studies. Maybe you would like to reflect on what more studies. AIMS, Rishikesh is already embarked on a leading set of studies. We heard already about that from Dr. Pankaj. So anything that you feel that IAPS would be taking up, other kind of studies maybe on these issues?
In my opinion, evaluation of different front of package levels, evaluation, I am using the word. Right now, we have looked at suitability. Suitability is slightly different than the term evaluation. That can be done only if they are adopting some on a pilot basis. Before going for any full-fledged government regulatory practices, let us test the regulatory environment. In which environment we are adopting which kind of front of package levels to enhance people's awareness about nutrients of concerns. And then it should be evaluated. We can develop a sound design and evaluate. Otherwise, on suitability, anyone can test our methodology, our protocols, our data collection process. We can put data also in public domain. Anyone can analyze and find out how Indian adults are behaving on that. definitely warning level is far ahead than other three.
Thank you so much for adding that point. I think the very important point you're making, and I'm glad I asked you that question, that pilots perhaps are a good way to embark upon making a policy that universalizes something for the whole country, and pilots that need to be evaluated.
Yeah.
So, of course, doing pilots in a country like ours where diversity is so high is also difficult. But again, I'm sure that you will be able to devise a robust methodology and methods for that. So thank you for that. Since there are no more questions, I'm going to take the liberty to invite Dr. HPS Sachdeva. HPS, sir, would you like to make some comments on everything that you have heard about the study in particular? Because today the conversation is about this new study, which is so exciting for us. HPS? And then after that, again, Dr. Ashwini, unfortunately, you missed the presentation on the study, but I'm sure you've read it because it was circulated to you and you always come well prepared. So I know that you must have read through it. So we'll come to you. Is Dr. HPS Sachdeva here?
I think he's not here, I think.
Okay. So over to you, Ashwini ji, for your views on this study, plus the whole process that you have been following of what's happening in government, the policies that are coming up, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Vandana ji. In fact, I always, have been learning from Dr. Gupta and all of you, all experts on this issue. In fact, when I came to know about this development at the FSSAI level, we, in fact, have been a critique of FSSAI on various issues. This is not the first one. Our first encounter with FSSAI was with regard to the fortification issue, and then on genetically modified seeds, genetically modified food, and now it is the warning level. So when I understand that word over, we have, except Australia and New Zealand, we have the warning label arrangements in almost all the countries wherever the FOPL is there. So there is no other country I could find which has got the star rating. And I was just looking at it that is Peru, Israel, Mexico, Uruguay, and now Brazil and Colombia and Argentina, Venezuela, etc. They are also coming ahead to have the warning label. So, and it is, though this study has come, but at the same time, I understand that there have been already studies with regard to the warning labels, and they are the best ones. And when this issue really started initially, the problem of obesity and other issues was not so much there, but over the years, this obesity and the problem of the early diabetes in children, and then other issues, the prevalence of cancer due to their ultra processed food and other things, that has been this menace has been increasing. So as a social activist, we do keep an eye on these developments, and therefore there is always a conflict of interest in case of these regulators. And in India, FSSAI, we had been flagging this issue of conflict of interest, and when this decision about going ahead with the star rating was taking place, when I looked at the list of the people, list of the stakeholders who were consulted, most of them were, they were from from the corporates, they were from the interested parties, and only 2-3 were from the consumer groups, and most of the consumer groups had said no to this. And therefore, if you make a consultative process and follow the consultative process, and you are not doing it honestly, and you are giving more emphasis on the opinions expressed by the corporates, expressed by the industry, then obviously you are going to face this problem. And we understand that today the problem of obesity and diabetes and other things, other kind of issues, they are there, and there's and when I flagged this issue with the Honorable Health Minister, Minister of Health, Mr. Mandavia, Dr. Mandavia, and he was also, of the same view that this star rating should not be allowed, and therefore he said that whenever this issue will come to me, I'll definitely take a call on this. And in the process, I feel that we need to highlight the present report which has come, and we have to publicize more and more. And at the same time, in fact, I requested Dr. Gupta also to give his time for meeting the Minister of Health on this issue. And very good news today must have been shared by Dr. Arun Gupta ji regarding the FSSAI CEO, and now he has been shifted. So the kind of push that was being made by the CEO on this issue now would be reduced. And in fact, I started a signature campaign also on this, and in the next meeting, we would like to present the issue before the Minister of Health, and also we'll also hand over the signatures made by the enlightened citizens. Approximately 20,000 signatures are there, and in favor of the warning label, against the star rating. So with this, I will stop here and I'll join later.
Thank you so much, Ashwini ji. You have the ear of the government and you have the power of people behind you, and the work that you're doing is very valuable. I note that 20,000 is a very important number for us, simply because the previous study, talked about a sample size of 20,000, and this was all, always kind of referred to that who are we to go against a sample of 20,000, and who are we to critique that method and methodology. So 20,000 is a magic number, and thank you for the information that you bring to this table, as well as the work that you are doing. You have raised a very important issue of conflict of interest and in the stakeholders meeting. And from there, I would just like to note that we have a member of the stakeholder committee present here amongst the participants. Amit Khurana is here. Amit, would you like to say a few words about your experience so far, and how you think that we can continue the discussion in FSSAI, and whether this committee is meeting, and some information you'd like to give us about this, the committee and the processes that are going on just now currently in FSSAI, if you have any extra information. So Amit Khurana from Center for Science and Environment, if he could be allowed to please show himself and speak. That's if he wishes to. Amit, yes.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay.
Not visible, but audible, yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Vandana. I think what I can say is, the last I know is that FSSAI, as we have been seeing in media also, that they were very keen. They are keen to take forward the health star rating. And yes, the processes, I was part of the processes, the discussions, the stakeholder consultations. And it is very clear that the banking the entire thing on IMA study is inappropriate. And a lot of the discussions and the responses from consumer groups, 3 or 4 of us who were present, most of us were very, very clear in our objections to health star rating. And all of us had submitted our responses, detailed letters to the stakeholders. So clearly, those have not been given necessary attention. And in my view, if I can say in one line, the interest of public health has not been given due attention, and the interest of industry has been given much more preference. And it was very evident all across the discussions and the way things happened. There's no time right now. And of course, this perhaps it'll be difficult to actually do a lot of, comment on all specifics, as I was part of that committee. But clearly in our personal communication, in our written submissions, we have very well highlighted where things went wrong, what should have happened. So
Amit, my question to you is, just very briefly, now that we have this new study, do you think that tables are going to turn? I mean, do you think there's a hope that perhaps there is a better reason for FSSAI to change its mind? And do you think that that's likely to happen? What is it? I'm like, in the context of now this new evidence.
I would really like that to hope that, but the signals are that's something that that FSSAI has not been keen to. They were always very, very keen on the study which was commissioned by them, and relying on the entire judgment based on the recommendations given by that study. All other evidences which were provided by different consumer groups at that time also were not really considered. So, and even after that, I know this study, I would like to congratulate Dr. Singh. It's a very good study, no doubt about that, much more robust than the study on which the decision to promote or push Health Star has now been taken. But I honestly do not have got any signal so far from FSSAI that they are keen to look into something like this. The single message that I hear in the media or I read in the media from the FSSAI CEO, and I just got to know today that he is now no longer the CEO, is that whatever the process of stakeholder consultation was, the logical end was commissioning a study and based on the recommendations, making a draft notification. And that was the sole purpose. Once the draft notification comes, what I read typically in the media is that now it will basically move towards, it will left open to the comments, and the final decision will be made based on the comments received by different stakeholders. I also heard very recently that it is being discussed in the health ministry. That was what I read as a comment from the CEO, erstwhile CEO. But I honestly do not feel that no matter how much I want to, but things looks like that they will not really, right now, it might as well create some pressure, but the logical end which we have been communicated is very simple. Commission study based on group recommendations. This is the recommendation from the study, and based on this we'll follow. No other external influence will be allowed to influence that. So that's what my understanding is.
Thank you, Amit, for those insights. They're important. And I think that finally we have to push ahead and go back to people, perhaps speak to the members of parliament and other people who can intervene. I'm going to close and bring you back to take you back to Arunji. I just want to say one word in closing. And this is really to highlight, we talked about silent epidemics and emergencies, but this is to highlight a tragedy. And that tragedy is the lack of dietary diversity that Indians currently have. लोगों को ढंग का खाना नहीं मिल पा रहा है. People are just not able to eat well. And only the rich and the super rich can afford all what WHO prescribes in terms of decent food, good quality food, fresh food, green food, organic food, safe food, non-toxic food. And the poor, we are only talking about fortification, chemical, packaging, processing. And this is the great tragedy of inequality in the country, which is only growing. And our solutions are reflecting that, sadly, that, we're taking it as a given that this is not going to improve. हमारे लोग कभी millets नहीं खाएंगे, उनको साग सब्जी नहीं मिलेगा. I just came from a meeting this morning, झारखंड में हो रहा था. FSSAI represented, experts represented on fortification, and everybody said dietary diversity is fine as a distant dream, but not something that's going to happen. And they all said it's so expensive. And that is very sad for me. Like, I don't think this country needs to worry about spending money for people, its own citizens, brothers, sisters, and children to eat decently. So I'm just going to close on that is the heart of the matter, that people should be able to eat decently. There are brothers and sisters equal to us in the constitution. They should be able to eat decently. And these other kinds of solutions that are being tried are actually, they are insulting and dismissive to the notion of equality that is embedded in this country as a democracy and in the constitution. So I'm just stopping here and taking you back to Dr. Arunji to close the session. We have done well for time. We were to go up to 5:40 and we are at 5:31. So just closing words from you, Arunji, and then you can, thank you.
Appreciate that the issues you have raised in the end, once again, that the country is facing, that we have been listening to this word of double malnutrition for ages now, right? And it's terribly getting worse by the day. And the worst is happening towards this unhealthy foods, and the policy making is really silent on it. So the three policies which most of the experts have highlighted, I'll very quickly read a comment from a member of parliament from Manipur, and he couldn't join because of the connections. I'll just quickly read his statement he has shared, that he says it is quite important for the Food Safety Authority to take a decision that protects public health, as its mandate is to ensure safe food. The unhealthy food products can only be curbed in consumption if the consumer is warned about it. The scientific evidence presented today is convincing, and that the warning label have the biggest impact. So just to, because he couldn't join, I thought I should read what he said, and we have included his statement in the press release, which we are going to share with all partners as well as the media friends. So a couple of updates I like to give is, one is that as our routine efforts, we have been approaching the Prime Minister's office and the Health Minister's office as well as the President's office, and so far we haven't heard anything positive from them. I'm really happy that Ashwini ji has shared this news that the Health Minister is positive. I also met him once. He showed some inclination to consider to look into this. And the latest news which Amit was sharing, I think the news also mentioned that the matter is in discussion at the level of the Health Ministry, which I tried to find from the sources, that the file is moving between Health and Food Safety Authority. And last time I came to know, it was lying in the Health Ministry. And Health Ministry said, any change in this file should come from Food Safety Authority. So there is something like that passing the buck is going on, which I believe if we put all our energies and forces and political pressures together, I'm sure we can win this battle at this level of draft regulation. If not draft, then we will have to continue to this fight. And second thing, which I feel is a little of a challenge, would be a new CEO who joins will have to be briefed, and if he understands the files have to be changed and all that, if at all it has to be unturned into the draft regulation, a consideration of this particular study, it comes from a Government of India's autonomous institute actually. So that's something which government should be actually proud of to lead this effort. So I'll sincerely request, I am very willing to join you, Ashwini ji, to any meetings. And let's say I'm sure Dr. Srinath Reddy, Dr. Bharti, Dr. Bhardwaj from different professional health associations, and Dr. S.K. Singh is in Mumbai, but if he can create a delegation also for the health minister, you can lead the delegation, in my opinion, and we can also get Amit Khurana and other consumer groups. We can all go together. Whosoever can join on that day. So please help us to get that appointment with the health minister. We can prepare a presentation which Dr. Singh has shared today, and that presentation can also be shared with the health minister. And if he has less time, we can share five, 6 slides, which are the key findings. So that would be my comment in the end. And we will continue to, of course, do whatever little we can in terms of advocacy efforts, writing or meeting the members of parliament or whosoever can influence this, because this is going to be if we get it wrong, it's going to be a disaster. So we don't want a disaster happening just in front of our eyes in our lifetime. So with this, I'll close. And thank you very much once again, Dr. Singh, Dr. Reddy, Dr. Ashwini Mahajan, Dr. Bharti, Amit, and Dr. Bhardwaj had to go for a meeting. And a lot of people have asked for the presentation. Dr. Singh, if you allow, can we share the presentation?
Yeah, you can share. Absolutely, there is nothing.
All right.
Because but major part of the presentation is there already in published paper. Only
Yes.
3-4 slides, diabetes, hypertension, and obesity. Those we have taken from manufacturers. There is absolutely no problem. We are academicians. If you are giving my presentation, I will look some comment. Like Professor Reddy type stalwarts can give some comments कि ऐसे नहीं ऐसे करो तो थोड़ा और अच्छा होगा. So that's our assets.
Yeah, I think presentation is easier
Please,
to
please.
in terms of reading and easier understanding, because some people in media and all, they prefer this simply said things. And if there is a demand, a couple of people have sent me messages for this, so that's why I asked. So thank you very much, Dr. Vandana, for your kind time and effort to chair the session. And let's all continue to, we have already joined hands in the position statement we have signed off a few months back. And there are ample resources, both in evidence, both in advocacy document. We only need to create more pressure now. So once again, thank you everyone, both the participants and the experts. So stay in touch. All the best to you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you.